and just very ugly. And he felt very uncomfortable about this for obvious reasons, but his inner, what he wanted to be, was not matched by his outer. So he and his father, who was in the medical profession, started to experiment with various lotions and ointments to see if they could come up with something that would help him with his blotchy skin. And they found something that worked for him. And he is then interacting with other patients who are in similar conditions to his. They see that his skin has improved. Can we try that product? They're making it in their kitchen, right in the sink, and the mom is helping out and so on. And then the light bulb goes off in his idea, in his mind. He has a business idea. There are lots of people with skin problems, and we have something innovative here. I'm going to go into business. And he did go into business. From his wheelchair and his mom's kitchen, he developed what is now a more than $10 million a year in sale international skin cosmetics company. And I ask again, what would have happened to him in any other time and in many places in the world? Here we have a man who can put together a significant life, who can become a millionaire from his wheelchair, and that is a wonderful modern success story. All right, but now we get sadder. Right? It's not equally distributed. Some places are doing well, some places are not doing well, and this is where we have to turn next. So I've got some countries in the Americas. Bolivia, very sad story. Average gross domestic product $2,008, average marginalized 1,948. Okay. Venezuela and Peru. On average, people are twice as rich as people in Bolivia. Twice as rich is good. Why are things so much better right in those countries? Brazil, Argentina, twice as rich again. Numbers here pushing between $8,000 and $9,000 a year. Now the difference between Bolivia and Brazil and Argentina is 400%, right? And that is significant. Right? But Canada, and the United States, again, a factor of, in this case, more than 4, right? A factor of between 5 and 6. So social science, has to ask the question, why, despite the experience of 2 centuries, some countries have learned the lessons better than other countries and institutionalized things so well. So what is going well in the countries that are going well, and what has not been going well, and what are people not doing or doing the exact opposite in various other countries? Now, in the United States also things are pocketed. It's a lot of success stories, but we think of the outstanding ones. For example, entrepreneurial culture in Silicon Valley in California. One of the great entrepreneurial cultures, vast amounts of wealth have been created in that department. Less well known perhaps is the one outside of Boston, the Route 128 corridor. Partly the institutions MIT and Harvard are there, but a huge number of high-tech companies, another entrepreneurial, innovative hotspot, great amounts of wealth. But outside of high-tech, you think of New York in the 20th century as a center of artistic innovation, artistic creativity with Broadway, sculpture, painting, and so forth. Why New York and not other places? The movie industry centered in Hollywood, around California. Interestingly, Bollywood has taken off in the last 20 years. They've developed an extraordinarily entrepreneurial, innovative movie culture in India, coinciding with the liberalization that occurred in India as well. And the point is that all of these places are places that became prosperous, wealthy in the production of movies, in the production of the arts, in the productions of technology, because they were first wealthy, and they were first wealthy because they were free. Every single one of them. You have a great deal of wealth and lots of freedom afforded to people, and they build cultural hotspots that create awesome stuff every single time. And one of the cultural indicators, at least in the United States, is that just in the last generation, it's not just all of the excitement about all this cool stuff that's been happening in all of these entrepreneurial sectors, being happy about the wealth, the life expectancy, all of the gadgets and so forth that we get to enjoy our life, but we're starting to celebrate the kind of culture that produces people who become entrepreneurs who dramatically change our lives. Now, this might be a bit of an overstatement. This is a little bit metaphorical here, but the idea is that entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial people in any culture, they're innovative, they're creative, they do their own thing. They take us, right, to places where we would not have expected to be able to go, and we like, right, what they do there. And so it's the lifestyle that is sexy. But it's also not just a metaphor, because another phenomenon, right, in the United States is the rise of all kinds of entrepreneurial-focused magazines, right, that are celebrating the entrepreneurial lifestyle and trying to teach people how to become, right, better entrepreneurs. And here, you know, this is explicit, right? Choose whichever one you prefer, right? But the point is, entrepreneurs are, for the first time in history, right, becoming cultural icons, right? As the people we look up to, we celebrate. Probably the most famous international example would be Steve Jobs. Everybody knows who Steve Jobs is, right? He is an entrepreneur, right, in a particular field, but he stands for a certain lifestyle and a certain approach to living, right, one's life, and that is good news. All right, so what we know from the social science is there are correlations between the amount of freedom economically and politically, right, that people have and their prosperity. And the prosperity is measured in terms of wealth, disposable income. It's measured in terms of increased life expectancy. It's also measured in terms of creativity in a wide variety of sectors, cultural sectors, high tech, theater, right, and so forth. And the question then is, can we, in social sciencey language, say why that happens, right? What are the internal dynamics to fill in the blank, so to speak, between these broader abstract statements that I've been making here. All right, so the story I want to tell you, and this is the handout that will be the takeaway if you have one, is things that social scientists in economics, in political science, in philosophy, and so forth have been working out for the last 2 centuries. And what I want to do is summarize the arguments, right, that have been made by the sharpest people trying to explain why you get the awesome results that you do in the countries that are the freest countries. Right? So we start with countries that are free countries. So basically liberal philosophy or liberal political philosophy. If you have a country that institutionalizes basic liberal political principles, and I've got some of the key subcomponents here, the rule of law, right, as opposed to the arbitrary dictates, right, of people who happen to be in power. There are stable principles. Government is limited in its functions, so you take away the dangers of unlimited governments, right, that can abuse their powers. Respect for property rights, democratic and republican, sovereignty issues and transfers of power. Having a constitution, right, in which everything is laid out, right, explicitly. Markets in which people are free, respect for civil rights, and so on. So this is just standard liberal, classically liberal political philosophy. Now, if you have a place like that, right, how does it develop? Right? What are the steps, right, that occur? And the argument goes, right, as follows. So one of the things that happens if you have a political system like that is that the amount of freedom individuals have increases. That's the first step. And that's, in many cases, the point of institutions like that, is to respect people's freedoms in religion, economics, their personal lives, right, and so forth. All right, if people have a greater amount of freedom, right, one line of argument says, this means that people will have the profit motive. Right? They will be working for themselves, they can work on whatever they want, and then as a result of that, people will work harder. So in a free society where people are encouraged to do what they want, so a lot of them will choose to earn money, and they will work very hard because they know property rights are respected, they will be able to keep, right, what they achieve. And if people work hard, then the material wealth for them individually, right, and culturally increases. All right, so that's one line of argument. Now there's another line of argument, though, that says if you have liberal institutions and people who are free, what that means is you have a decentralized economy. You don't have central decision makers. Individuals make their own decisions in their own lives about what they know is important to them, what's available to them, right, and so forth. And this line of argument says, and this is the argument that comes more out of the Austrian school, that the most important thing that any culture will do is manage its knowledge. Right? It's not so much primarily that people work hard. People do work hard, but more important is to work smart. Right? And not all cultures are good at tapping into the amount of knowledge that is out there in a given culture. If you have a centralized culture, then what you were saying is, here are 5 or 10 very smart people, and what they know about the economy as a whole is going to dictate the direction of the economy as a whole. And this point says that is very inefficient, because no matter how smart your smartest 5 or 10 people in the whole country are, they do not know as much collectively as millions and millions of people do know individually about their own circumstances. So the free market decentralized economies are then going to develop all kinds of networks for trading goods and services right back and forth, and as a result, those countries are going to become more prosperous. So people are working harder and they're working smarter, and that's why those countries become wealthier. Now there's another line of argument that says if you have individual freedom, then we're all different. We all have different interests, different motivations, right? Different skill sets, aptitudes, right, and so forth. That what you will have is a whole lot more individuality. And of course, individuality will be encouraged and celebrated, right, in these kinds of countries. But individuality is the thing that drives creativity and innovation. So in cultures that are freer, you're going to have a whole lot more innovative ideas, innovative experiments, creative ideas, right, and so forth. And it's the creativity that is going to drive the material wealth. All right, so this line of argument, put these three together, right, then says the free countries are the ones in which people work harder, they work smarter, and they work more creatively compared to any other possible mode of social organization, and that's why they become wealthier. All right. That then leaves the possibility with all this extra wealth that everybody can be made better off, right? Or at least the majority can be made better off. There will be historical transitions here, or at least the average person, right, is going to be made better off. Any variety of arguments here. The argument will be that poor people will be better off. There will be more opportunities. They won't have the social barriers. More jobs will be created for them. There's going to be, because of all of the extra wealth, more money available for philanthropy. So the people who are in really desperate circumstances are going to be better off under these rich, free economies than in other kinds of countries, and so on. And then also the highest quality people are going to be better off. People who are artists and potential artistic geniuses, right, in dance, in opera, in ballet, all things that require a great deal of artistic freedom and a great deal of wealth to support. The highest of high culture is also going to be supported better in these cultures than in other cultures as well. We should also add, of course, science and medicine, very creative people who are going to be working in those fields who require a great deal of intellectual freedom and a great deal of wealth. And so scientific innovation is going to increase as well. All right, another line of argument that says, well, look, maybe we have been talking too much about money here, and money can't necessarily buy happiness, although it can buy a lot of things that make you happy. But it's not equivalent, right, to happiness. And not everybody pursues wealth. They have other things that they choose to devote their life to. But the point is going to be that if you have a culture in which people are free to be themselves and to live their lives the way they want to live as individuals, they are going to be happier people. And so you will have a happier, right, culture. You're also then going to have a more interesting society. Instead of everybody doing drudge work for a living, things that they don't like, you're going to have all kinds of interesting people doing all sorts of interesting things, some of them very quirky, some of them eccentric and so forth. But it's more interesting and enjoyable to live in a culture of individualists, right, than in a more conformist and collectivized, right, kind of economy. So that's an argument, right, that is made. There's also an argument that there are additional social benefits, right? It's in the cultures that have first celebrated individual freedom that all of the religious wars first died down in Holland, right? In England and so forth. The places that became the most tolerant were the cultures that were first the most free in the more basic sense. And that makes sense because if you respect people as individuals, that they can do what they want in their lives, that means in their religious lives. I might disagree with you, right, on religion, but the important point for you is that it's your choice, and I have to respect that, and the same thing holds the other way. It's my choice, and I have to respect that, and that culturally is an enormous value, right, the religious toleration that's been developed. We also can then say that sexism and racism declines in those cultures. If you think of the traditional cultures where men do men things and women do women things, and we only deal with people of our ethnicity or of our race, and we just automatically assume that our race and ethnicity is the best one in the world and everyone else is inferior. Historically, it was in the cultures that first developed the liberal institutions and the free markets that racism and sexism declined. For individualistic reasons again, right? No matter what your skin color is or the arrangement of your reproductive organs, you are an individual, it's your life, and you should have the right to live it as you see fit. Also, I just emphasize an economic motive here, that to the extent that the profit motive is encouraged in people, if I want to make money and I am hiring people, suppose to make it a simple example, I can hire a student or a recent graduate who was a B- student, but he's a male, or I can hire an A student who is a female. Who am I going to hire if I am motivated by profit? I'm going to hire the person I think I'm going to make the most money from. So I might have traditional sexist attitudes, but the profit motive is going to be more likely to not deal or not act on my sexist ideas. Right, or if I'm in business and I've got a customer who is of another race, suppose I'm an old-fashioned racist and I don't like brown people, right? But this brown person, right, wants to buy $100,000 worth of my product, right? Do I say, well, I'm sorry, I'm just not going to take your money because I don't like brown people, right? Or am I more likely to say, okay, I'll do business with brown people, not my first choice, but the profit motive is going to lead me to do business and start to strike relationships with people I otherwise would not strike relationships. And so it's in the liberal countries that you find a lessening of racism, sexism, and so on. All right, finally, international peace. The point historically also is that the nations that used to go to war with each other all the time, France versus England, right? France versus Spain, right? Everybody against the Germans, right? The Italians, right? Against the Austrians, right? And so forth, right? When those countries made the transition from being traditional societies, right? Based on feudalism, based on combinations of ethnicity, religion, right? And so forth, and became modern commercial nations, they stopped fighting wars with each other. When was the last time England and France fought a war? Almost 200 years, right? And if you look at the 200-year period before the 1815 end of Napoleonic era, how often did France and England fight wars, right? Constant, right? The times that they weren't fighting wars were, I'm exaggerating a little bit, less than the amount of time that they, right, and so forth, you get the point. Okay, so now, to put some names to this, this is the abstract flowchart. In liberal thought, right, there are different theoreticians who emphasize different parts of this argument as being the most important part. So for Ayn Rand, the most important issue here is individual freedom. Right? That is what almost all by itself justifies liberal institutions. Right? Most famous names associated with incentives of profit motive, Milton Friedman did an enormous amount of work right on that part there. So he's concerned with, as an economist, right, increasing material wealth, and so he wants to make the motivation right correct. Most famous name associated with the knowledge argument is Friedrich Hayek. Most famous, actually I put Adam Smith in here because he had very tenuous early versions of the incentives argument and the dispersed knowledge argument, so I have to give him some props for this argument. Joseph Schumpeter is most famously associated with the creative destruction idea, creativity and innovation. Ludwig von Mises emphasizes the distribution of the goods that are produced in prosperous societies, emphasizing that on average everybody is made better off in those cultures compared to traditional cultures. There's a newer group of mostly younger market-friendly thinkers called bleeding heart libertarians. As the name suggests, their argument is that what makes liberal institutions good is really what it does for the poor, and so the biggest part of their argument is showing how the poor are materially and opportunistically better off, right, in cultures that are free compared to other ones. Bertrand de Jouvenel is most famous for making the argument that high culture needs a great deal of wealth and freedom, and so one of the great virtues of liberal societies is that they create a large number of people who can inspire us and take us to higher levels of culture than we otherwise would have achieved, right, individually. John Stuart Mill is most famous, right, for making the argument about individual happiness and collective happiness being maximized in societies that are free, the cultivation of individuality. And partly this more aesthetic argument that we like to go to cultures that are interesting and meet interesting people that aren't just the same